monsters, hellfire, death, and redemption. R.I.P.D 2 has it all, and much like movies in this genre, several little nuances tend to go unnoticed by a lot of viewers. That's where we come in. We'll be shedding light on a lot of concepts you might have missed. So stay tuned.
Ready? Set. Go!
Okay, so a little backstory. As the newest member of the Rest in Peace Department R.I.P.D enforcing the laws of the afterlife, Sheriff Roy Pulsipher holds the world's best chance of being saved. As the Wild West has actually gone to hell, Roy reasoned that joining the R.I.P.D would allow him to reconnect with his daughter and uncover the truth behind his murder. Instead, when he is given a task to stop a terrible demon from opening a passage to the underworld, he gets his holsters packed with chaos and hellfire. Now that cowboys and animals are clashing, and zombie madness is causing apocalyptic devastation, Roy and his sidekick Jean, a strange swordswoman, are in charge of deciding the fate of the living and the dead. R.I.P.D 2. Rise of the Damned continues the supernatural exploits of two officers from the Rest in Peace Department from the first film, and it seems to be both a prequel and a reboot. Like most people, we expected the sequel of the first movie to be a trip into the future. But this movie takes us back to the 1870s and really dives deeper into Roy's experiences that lead him to become one of R.I.P.D's top agents in the first movie installment. It tells his backstory. Days before his daughter's wedding, he is killed in a firefight and joins the Rest in Peace Department. Little did he know that a portal to hell was about to open up because someone had dug in the mines a little too far. The whole thing ends up being some sort of devilish jailbreak. Now, let's dive into some stuff you might have missed. Deados got a makeover. If you watched the first movie, you'd realize that Deados, the escaped souls, look a lot different in the R.I.P.D 2. Granted, it's the prequel, and this means the monsters may have advanced after centuries. Still, the difference was startling. In the first movie, we saw people who looked like humans but ended up becoming very deformed when they popped. Popping refers to these monsters revealing their true form. We're talking about two heads, cracked body parts, and so on. In part 2, though, there was an emphasis on souls. Basically, these new Deados are spectral energies that escape from hell but are nothing without a body. So they need to possess humans to function. These human bodies are branded with a circle of sorts, making it very easy to identify them. When these particular Deados popped, as opposed to a deformed human, we saw some sort of black gaseous entity with several tentacles, for lack of a better word. That's how the movie began, with a soul from the ground possessing a human, and then going on to build a mini army of dead souls possessing human bodies. Otis, as we later discover to be his name, had been assembling a demon army and was prepared to carry out a rite that would let loose even more demons upon Earth. He wanted human beings' bodies to act as containers for the demonic forces that were ascending from hell. Purely gold weapons. The weapons in R.I.P.D are made of gold. In the first R.I.P.D, we saw a mix of metals, gold and silver, but now only gold weapons abound. We suspect it's to pay homage to the gold theme in the first movie, in which they built the Staff of Jericho purely out of gold, the device that was to bring Deados to Earth and make the planet theirs. Ouroboros. Remember the circle of sorts branded on Deados after they possess humans? That's an ouroboros. In the movie, it's a symbol of the circle of life and death and serves as a reminder to R.I.P.D officers of the constant threat they are up against. As Roy found out during his brief orientation, it's not a concept unique to the film, though. As with many concepts, this was adapted from real life. The ouroboros dates back to ancient Egypt and is one of the earliest known symbols. It has the appearance of a dragon or serpent biting its own tail and represents the concepts of rebirth, eternal life, repetition, and cycles. Since 1600 BC, the name ouroboros has meant either all is one or devouring its own tail. The cyclical nature of time and the universe is symbolized by the beginning of creation after the destruction and the rebirth of life. The icon was created in ancient Egypt and found its way to the West via some Greek magical papyri. This emblem has been incorporated into many religions and cultures. So it's no surprise we're seeing it appear in a movie about heaven, hell, and the circle of life. Another interesting thing is that in the same scene, the angel guide mentioned normal bullets feeling like snake bites for Deados. It might just be a coincidence, but we think not. Christian symbolism. There will obviously be several Christian references in a movie about heaven and hell, but you might really understand some of the symbolism, and that's what we'll be talking about. We'll start with the crucifix. When Roy is assigned a job and sent back to Earth, he meets his new co-worker, Jean. She has a sharp sword and carries a crucifix. This first came to light when she stopped a Deados limb from completely popping, much like how ancient priests would use the sign of the cross after sprinkling holy water on him. When used on a Deado, it brings out their true form and separates their spectral energy, or soul, from the body previously possessed. During this process, the ouroboros seems to be activated, most likely signifying the end of the soul's cycle. Then we have the tears of Christ, which led to the permanent sealing of the ruptured ground the Deados initially planned on using as their gateway. In the Bible, Jesus wept. The tears of Christ for many doctrines signify proof of his compassion for the world, and these tears being the antidote to evil makes perfect sense. Finally, at the end of the movie, Otis mentions the unholy trinity. This term has multiple meanings, but this particular reference seems to be from John Milton's poem, Paradise Lost. He was an English poet who lived in the 17th century, and the poem is about the biblical account of the fall of man. Satan, a fallen angel, tempting Adam and Eve and their expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Beelzebub, Lucifer, and Astaroth make up the evil trinity in John Milton's Paradise Lost, and in R.I.P.D. too. Otis is Astaroth. Joan of Arc. Going back to Roy's partner, we later find out that she is actually Joan of Arc, and in retrospect, there were so many signs, and we wondered how we missed it. The first time we see her, Jean is seated on a horse, looking majestic, like a true warrior. Her armor looks very similar to the typical depiction of Joan, right down to her famous sword. Especially as she keeps making reference to her proficiency with a sword. Her age is also pretty darn close. She said she had 445 years of experience in R.I.P.D. in the movie. The real Joan died in 1431, so that's about 591 years. Give or take a century, it kind of makes sense. There's also her irrational fear of fire. Being burned to death will certainly give you pyrophobia. Lastly, her name was the most straightforward giveaway. She was French, so of course, she went by Jean as opposed to Joan, as well as being remembered as a martyr. Joan has also been regarded as an early feminist, an obedient daughter of the Roman Catholic Church, and a symbol of liberty and independence. Seems like the perfect person to draw inspiration from in the case of this movie. Another interesting thing is that Jean says she picked up so many cool weapons and artifacts, such as the Tears of Christ, on her travels. Seeing as she actually died in 1431, several years after the death of Christ, we're using real dates here, we can't help but wonder how she actually got her hands on them. Angus. At the beginning of the movie, we see Angus, Roy's daughter's fiancé, a nervous mess who is obviously a good guy but seems jittery. And in the Wild West at the time, that was certainly not a trait to be admired. However, when we got to the middle of the story, we saw Angus taking charge, protecting, and standing up for people. In several incidents, we see that Angus is making an effort to assist others, proving that he is not as much of a coward as Roy believed. So what exactly happened? How did he change so drastically? We could speculate that the seriousness of the situation finally made him step up and be bolder. We could, but we think Angus was always a strong character but was just intimidated by Roy. And who wouldn't be? Roy was a sheriff and a very competent one at that. Angus obviously wanted his approval, and when that wasn't forthcoming, Angus probably got a little nervous. Everything worked out in the end though, as Roy couldn't communicate with him any longer, meaning he had joined the ranks of Roy's loved ones. Roy's real tenure period with the R.I.P.D. The movie ended on a very good note. The abducted individuals were freed, and Slim even showed that some Deados could repent and desire to do good and change for the better. Roy admits that while he is content to have Jean as a partner, all he really wants is to visit his deceased wife in heaven. Roy learns from Jean that he can enter the afterlife, but only after spending at least 100 years in the R.I.P.D. What Roy doesn't know is that his time with R.I.P.D. isn't even close to over.
Minimum 100-year contract term.
Flash forward to the future in R.I.P.D. 1. Roy said that his tenure had been extended 3 times, and at the end of the movie, 53 more years were added to his tenure. He seems to really love the job, so it's probably a win for him. Have you seen the movie, or like many, you're yet to watch it? What do you think of the plot? Did you notice any of the secrets we revealed? Comment below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out other videos on our channel and subscribe for more awesome content.